Today we continue our stewardship journey of extravagant generosity, the heart of giving. Over the past few weeks, using our heart cards, we've shared what we love about this church and those who have made a difference in our spiritual journey. If you didn't have the opportunity, as many of you stayed away in the snow, which I don't blame it, we do have extras from last week and extras from the first week, if you'd like to share. Some of the people that were written down that made an impact on the spiritual journeys of the people in this church: spouses, grandparents, church members, pastors, friends, parents, siblings, youth pastors, the list goes on. Thank you for sharing with us who has made a difference in your life. I hope you took the time this week also to maybe thank some of those people in person, whether it was in a note, an email, a phone call, or even a simple text message. I thank God for each and every one of you in this room, and each of your individual journeys that brought you here, and those who came alongside you that helped you to get to this place that you are yet today. In your bulletins today, you'll find this week's heart card. And on this one, it asks you to share your visions and hopes for our church. This week, we'll focus on what we see as the vision of our church, our dreams, what we want our church to be, what it can be. I'm excited to see how God speaks through each of you and through your hearts as you express these hopes and dreams and visions for our church. Through this exercise, may we continue as a congregation to explore what it means to offer extravagant generosity to ourselves, to our church, and to the world. Please pray with me. God of extravagant generosity, love, and grace, in abundance you give to us, both spiritually and physically. Help us hold lightly to the things of this world and hold tightly to the things of the kingdom. May what we are, what we do, and what we say be our gifts to you. Let us vision for the future of our church and ways that we can generously share your gifts with the world. We pray in your holy name. Amen. Several years back, a movie came out starring Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson called The Bucket List. In this movie, two terminally ill men who never knew each other before that day develop a list of the things that they have always wanted to do. They face their task with a great sense of urgency and dedication. They come to realize through each thing that they check off that they're finding greater joy in their life. They're feeling more alive than they ever thought possible. They're feeling a greater sense of purpose. Their bucket list gives them a way to focus their energies. The idea of a bucket list has been around for a long time. At the most basic of levels, they're a list of things you want to accomplish in your lifetime, or as they state in the movie, a list of things you want to do before you kick the bucket. The lifetime of a church is infinitely longer than any of our lives. Yours, mine, any of them. But each of us shares a part in the story of the church, in the joy, in the livelihood, and especially in having this church be around for many, many years. Today, we explore a bucket list for our church. A list of things we want our church to be about, to represent, to stand for. This week's card asks you to consider what you would most like to see happen in this church in the next year, or maybe even further. I invite you to also consider what you would like to see happen in your life in that same time frame. Are there ways in which your hopes and your dreams for the church align with your own personal dreams? This morning, we continue our journey of extravagant generosity. As a church, I believe that we are called to dream God-sized dreams, Dreams that cause us to think bigger than ourselves, bigger than what is comfortable or easy. When we dream God-sized dreams, we must put our faith in God, trusting that God will walk alongside us and lead us forward. Bishop Robert Schnase, in his book, 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregation, writes this: vibrant, fruitful, growing congregations practice risk-taking mission and service. Risk-taking mission and service includes the projects, the efforts, and work people do to make a positive difference in the lives of others for the purpose of Christ, whether or not they will ever be part of that community of faith. Some churches practice risk-taking mission and service by sending work teams to Mozambique, Russia, Mexico, Honduras, or they assist closer to home in cleanup and reconstruction after hurricanes or tornadoes or floods. Other churches focus on projects within their own community, such as after-school programs for at-risk children, food banks, soup kitchens, and ministries of witness aimed at forming public policy. Others get involved in ministries to senior adults and retirement centers, regular services for the incarcerated, and efforts to challenge and change unjust or inhumane systems that affect the poor. What an amazing and inspiring list of ideas he offers to us for fruitfulness, for risk-taking missional activities. I love the way that sounds, risk-taking missional service. As you begin to think about your hopes and your vision for our church, do some of your ideas fall in line with the likes of the ideas from Bishop Schnase? Did his list bring up some ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of before? I think what I love most about what he says is that in all that we do, may our driving force be to make a positive difference in the lives of others for the purposes of Christ, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or if they will ever be a part of our faith community, but because God has called us to love all people and serve all people. Both of our scriptures for today remind us to put our faith in God. In doing so, God will provide what is needed. The prophet Joel offers direction for the people of God. He urges the people to turn away from their ways before and turn toward God, but not just to turn to God for worship, to sound the horns, to worship God in all that they do. The people are inspired through this worship to find a new life, to change the way that they've lived. Joel believes in God's faithfulness, in God's steadfast, unending, always present love. And so Joel proclaims it with gusto, with energy. And because God is faithful, the horizon, even when it is unknown, even when there are parts of the horizon you cannot see, it still greets us with the crispness of a new dawn, with the light, even that little shimmer of light that will guide our steps. Although we didn't read it today, Joel closes out this chapter with a reminder that through God, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Prophesy, dream dreams, and see visions. As children of God, we are all called to do just that. To dream those dreams, to prophesy, to pay attention. How is God inspiring you through these words? Especially as we consider our vision for this church. Vision comes about as God inspires people, all people, to prophesy, to dream dreams. What has God inspired you to envision for this coming year? At the beginning of our reading from the Gospel of Matthew, we are offered 3 simple words that can be really difficult to follow. Do not worry. I don't know about you, but these 3 words are a challenge for me. Maybe I should make them a part of my breath prayer every day. To pray to God as I breathe in let me not worry about this. Breathe in, let me not worry about this. Because I find myself in a state of worry more than I would like to admit. Sometimes I'm worried about really big things, but more often than not, I'm worrying about things that really have minimal or even no real consequences, but I still worry. After lots of conversation, lots of reading from scholars, I found a few tips that help me to let go of that worry, or at least let some of that worry go. I'm not great at it all the time, but I'm getting better. One thing that works for me is when I feel that worry coming up, like they said, that knot in your stomach. I love that she said that Katie told us that. When you feel that knot starting to build, one thing that works for me is to take those deep breaths. Maybe not a prayer, but just some deep breaths. To center my body and my soul. To offer a word of prayer to God. Sometimes, as I said, it can be as simple as help me to relax, God. Help me to find peace. Other times I find it helpful just to voice my worries out loud to myself or to a trusted friend. I found that simply by putting those words out there, those worries out into the world, that they lose control over me and my emotions and my energy level. These are just a few strategies that work for me, and if you need them, use them. If you have some that work for you, I invite you to share those with some other people later, because I think we all find ourselves in a place of worry from time to time. And the more tools we have, the better off we are. Jesus reminds us that God will take care of us, that we are not to worry about those things. Now, he's not telling us to abandon our lives and go live willy-nilly waiting for God to do everything for us. But Jesus is calling for us to steer away from those excessive worries, those worries that do bring us down, that bring our energy and our emotions to a low. We are reminded throughout Scripture that when we put our faith in God, when we live our lives devoted to God, when we strive to be in relationship with God, we can find peace. We can experience abundance and God's steadfast, ever-present love. True discipleship, truly following and being a follower of Jesus, involves giving ourselves to God, putting our faith and our trust in God. Jesus reminds us time and time again that when we put our trust in God, God will provide. God will provide. That doesn't mean we always get what we want, but God will be there to help us. We will get what we need, and in God's time. As a church, we are called to dream big dreams, to put our trust in God and follow where God is leading us. Today, we begin to set our sights on what can be. Today, we begin to dream dreams of who we can be as a church. We celebrate all that this church has been, all that the church is today, and look forward inspiringly toward what the future of this church can be in 1 year, 10 years, 100 years from now. Where is God leading us? How is God leading us? What is the church we vision for future generations? This past Friday, I participated, along with Mark, in a time of holy conversation with United Methodists from all over our area. It was led by Bishop Karen Oliveto. As a part of our time together, she asked us to think and write down one word that described what our vision was for the church, for the future of the church. I was inspired by the words that were shared around that fellowship hall. As we also look to envision the future of this church, I invite you to think of one word that describes the church you hope for generations to come. I'll give you a minute to think. Feel free to write it down, and I invite you to shout out, or say it quietly, out loud what your one word is for the future of this church, whenever you're ready.
Relevant. Acceptance. United.
Inclusive.
Compassionate.
Caring.
What? The light on the hill.
Inviting.
Listening.
Spiritual. Noisy. Going forward in faith. Exciting. Progressive.
Comforting.
Serving.
Faithful.
Loving.
Thank you for sharing those words. There's probably more, and they'll keep coming in your mind. But remember those words. The words you shared, the words you heard. That is a church that I want to be a part of. That is a church that will see us through for many, many years. I encourage you to continue to think about those. Maybe those start once you're writing on your vision cards. Maybe they were part of it already. But I invite you to remember those. I invite you to share those. Be in conversation with people in Fellowship Hall. Be in conversation with people in the community about your hopes and your dreams and your vision for what church can and is. So I do invite you this week to remember that. Next Sunday, we will all be invited to make a commitment to this church, how we will express and grow in our extravagant generosity to our church, to help this church be what we want it to be for many, many years. You'll receive in the mail this week a letter and an estimated giving card. This is for you to think about, to pray about, to consider how you can help this church continue to do its ministries, continue to be a vital part of this community. And next Sunday, you're invited to bring those back. And we'll bring them forward and share our commitments with this church for that day and for the year ahead. As those early members of this church dreamed dreams of a church for this community, let us also dream dreams of a church for generations that aren't even here yet.